Hi, my name is Emily Carollo,
I'm Natalie Webb.
And I'm Elisa Grau.
and this is our 10 Things Archaeology of Design final presentation. Physical marketplaces have held a prominent role in the economy for almost as long as humans have been in existence. Having a physical marketplace to trade is one of the first signs of an economically advanced society. Marketplaces are the stepping stones to a productive and successful economy. Historically and even today, marketplaces take on many different forms. The most common type of marketplaces are street markets, floating markets, where goods are sold from boats. These are normally prevalent in places like Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Wet markets, where live animals are sold. These are mostly in Asian countries. Farmers markets that sell fresh produce, flea markets that sell used merchandise, and handicraft markets. When most people think about historically marketplaces and trading, the first thing that pops into their mind is the Silk Road. The Silk Road was a trade network that connected different regions of the world in commerce. It was a means of connecting different regions that had a lack of a specific product with a region that had an abundance of said product, and vice versa. As you can see, the 4,000-mile-long Silk Road spanned from China through India to Mesopotamia, which is currently Iran. Its main purpose was to connect the two largest civilizations at the time, Rome and China. It was used most heavily from 120 BCE to 1453 CE, which was when the Ottoman Empire began boycotting trade with the West at around this time. It was called the Silk Road because it was mostly known for the trading of silk. Silk traveled westward, while gold and silver traveled eastward. Gunpowder and paper, both made in China, and spices from the east were also very popular goods that were traded on the Silk Road. Much like today's marketplaces, the most valuable thing that was traded, however, was culture. The Silk Road brought art, religion, language, architecture, and science to areas that would not have been exposed to them without it. The trade of goods goes back as far as pre-documented history, so it is nearly impossible to specify the beginnings of goods trading and physical marketplaces. So that we can compare how we integrate physical marketplaces into our society today, I will speak about the two most famous types of physical marketplaces in ancient history: the ancient agora of Athens in ancient Greece, and forums of ancient Rome. Agoras, meaning a gathering place or assembly in Greek, were the places of some of the first evidence of physical marketplaces that historians have found. We believe that there were lively and full-scale retail markets in the 6th century BCE in different agoras around Greece. The most famously known agora is the ancient agora of Athens, which was located on a hill called Agoraios Kolonos, or Market Hill, at the intersection of two main roads in Athens. This agora was not originally intended to become a marketplace. In fact, it was used as a burial site for many years before transforming into a thriving marketplace where people could gather and sell commodities, produce, and mostly their handicrafts. The most famous craft that was sold in ancient Greece was, of course, the pottery. Fine Greek pottery was in high demand. Unlike the marketplaces that most of us are used to today, ancient Greek agoras had intermediaries between sellers and customers called the kapelloi, who would attempt to make the sale as fair as possible. Another prominent marketplace in ancient history were the ancient Roman forums around 120 AD, which some call the peak of the Roman Empire. Just like an agora, forum is the Latin word for a large open space or marketplace. Also, like agoras, forums were generally located centrally in their cities. Forums were not solely used as marketplaces, but also as spaces for large meetings and orations. However, unlike the ancient agora of Athens, most of the famous forums in ancient Greece were originally intended to be a marketplace, while also having these other functions. Forums exhibited much more organized and standardized marketplaces than ever before. Weights and measures of materials were standardized in ancient Rome to help normalize costs for the first time. Roman bureaucracy even stepped in to standardize all of the scales and measures, prevent prices from becoming too high, and prevent monopolies on staple products. This was the first sign of a more organized marketplace with standards and rules that aimed to please the customer. So, where are we now? Obviously, today's society is much more advanced than that of ancient Greece or Rome. Even though we still have types of traditional marketplaces that we had seen in the past, more types of marketplaces have emerged. As previously mentioned, marketplaces started out as routes across which people would travel to trade across their regions, but then shifted into central areas where people could set up their shops temporarily. Over time, these shops became permanent storefronts, and then these storefronts became hubs of permanent stores that we like to call malls. However, in our advanced, technology-rich society, online marketplaces have emerged and have gained a lot of traction over the past 10 years. These online marketplaces seem to be an equilibrium between physical and historical marketplaces in the online world, because one can sell their handmade products not only to people in their area, but also to people around the world, just like the Silk Road.
As Emily just explained, the marketplaces of the past tell the story of societies through artifacts. In history, these artifacts are objects, physical things that can be held, touched, and passed around. Within the new and bustling world of technology, however, the clear-cut lines that once defined an artifact have to be reconsidered, reevaluated, and reimagined. In an attempt to expand the definition of an artifact, we endeavored to consider the reality of the immense online culture that exists today, resulting in our choosing of a non-physical artifact. For our 11th thing, we chose to present Etsy.com, a website from which customers can purchase handmade or vintage items from individual sellers' stores. Etsy is defined by its online presence as a modern marketplace, but reflects the traditions of the ancient markets described by Emily, in which merchants can peddle handmade goods. So what is Etsy? Etsy is a forum on which individuals and small business owners can create a profile from which to sell their own handmade goods. You can find unique goods from cufflinks and art prints to leg warmers for your chair. The focus of Etsy is in providing business and retail opportunities that connect individuals, cultures, and societies worldwide. The broad range of items and the global community of buyers and sellers are central to the significance of Etsy as our 11th thing, as it serves as a convergent of culture, convenience, and classical markets. What makes Etsy unique? Etsy is not Amazon or eBay. It is a rhetoric-heavy enterprise that promises to do more than simply turn a profit. It promotes the ability to create a parallel retail universe that removes the alienation of mass production and replaces it with personal connections. Beyond recreating this environment, Etsy modernizes, globalizes, and upgrades the efficiency of the singular economy. Contemporary technology and innovative design allows crafters and artisans in all corners of the world to reach a global market. Etsy's goal is to reimagine commerce and create a more fulfilling world. This statement, while lofty, comes directly from their website and is the essence of the site itself. Etsy wasn't revolutionary in creating an online market, but from its founding, Etsy has been defined by its approach to personalization of the online trade. They do this by creating stores for each seller, much like a merchant in an agora would have a specialized stand. How does Etsy represent the ideals of contemporary life? Etsy has taken direct and public steps to encourage positive environmental impact and work conditions for the global community. On October 31st, 2014, Etsy announced that they had become a B Corporation. They explained that a B Corporation is a new family of companies that endeavors to use the power of business as a force on social and environmental problems, providing a greater social service than just economical stimulation. So how does that make it a symbol of the 21st century? Etsy is guided by principles of mindfulness, transparency, humanity. All of these things come down to the fact that Etsy is about people, and people today are at the same crossroads between the online and the physical as the company itself. The defining characteristic of Etsy is the way it embodies the importance of technology and the online world in conjunction with tradition. The cultural impact of this environmentally friendly, economically sustainable, and personalized business model are broad. And now, Elisa will tell you more about them.
So now let's take a look at the modern implications of companies like Etsy in a broader sense. Although personal computers were invented much earlier, it was the early 1990s when the birth of electronic commerce occurred. through the arrival of the World Wide Web and other internet browsers. E-commerce, by definition, is the application of current and emerging information and communication technologies to conduct business. E-commerce has transformed the marketplace as we know it. Traditional intermediary functions, like the middleman, are being replaced, new products and markets continue to be developed, and new relationships have been forged between businesses and consumers. E-commerce helps businesses in offering an efficient method of providing products and services while reaching a global audience. For consumers, e-commerce provides broad selection, reduced costs, improved customer service levels, and convenience, including better research and quicker transactions. Essentially, with the technology of today, it is ridiculously cheap to become a merchant and reach millions of customers worldwide. But how does this affect the relationship between business and consumer? Well, one of the significant advantages of electronic commerce is that it reduces the distance between buyer and seller, letting businesses develop individual customer profiles and market on a more personal basis. This creates trust and confidence between the business and the consumer. One strategy to achieve this sort of trust and confidence is openness. Consumers are increasingly treated as partners in product design and creation. Openness brings about increased transparency and competition in the economy and in society. Another strategy is through effectiveness of public content. Some ways this is done are through an efficient and informative customer service center or website page, through advertisement, and through communication through blogs. In terms of Etsy, CEO Robert Callen has initialized two concepts to effectively take hold of e-commerce opportunities and strengthen customer relationships. The first is social strategy. Etsy plans to introduce such a strategy that will include forums and chat rooms for members. In CEO Callen's words, "A market is a conversation. For us at Etsy, we want to figure out how buying an item from someone is a conversation. Facebook's message is to connect and share, and so Etsy is taking that one further, where it is to connect, share, and exchange things." The second concept that Etsy is using is personalization. Etsy has a common problem for marketplaces in that it's difficult to find certain products, to personalize product searches, and to provide recommendations. In December of 2010, Etsy acquired a company called Adtuitive that will lead these efforts. We have seen how electronic-based companies like Etsy affect the relationship between businesses and consumers, but how do they affect the economy in a broader sense? Although e-commerce facilitates global markets, it's also impacting local commerce, sometimes in negative ways. Though crafters have the opportunity to gain employment through Etsy.com and through similar electronic businesses, there are many people who are negatively affected by the implications of e-commerce. Changes in labor force can mean that thousands of traditional retail jobs disappear, or the job opportunities for less skilled workers decrease, while those for the higher skilled, and often of higher socioeconomic status, increase. For example, going from physical salespeople to programmers who can code websites like Etsy's. On a more positive note, e-commerce significantly increases interactivity in the economy. People have the ability to communicate and transact business anywhere, anytime. We can see the facilitation of global commerce clearly in Etsy. Artisans and crafters all over the world can connect instantly with consumers to sell their wares. Although it is primarily an economic phenomenon, electronic commerce is indeed part of a broader process of social change. Let's take a look at the social implications of e-commerce and companies like Etsy. Social change can be characterized by the globalization of markets and the growing prominence of technology in everyday life. An important concept to understand is that technology alters the relative importance of time. E-commerce is decreasing the importance of time by speeding up production cycles and allowing virtual storefronts to stay open permanently, allowing consumers to conduct transactions around the clock. This shows that e-commerce raises the potential for saving time, as consumers can shop more efficiently. Electronic commerce is being shaped by, and increasingly will help to shape, modern society as a whole. According to the Census Bureau, 74.4% of all U.S. households used the internet in 2013, and 22% of all worldwide disposable income was spent online. What we can predict from these statistics, our analysis of Etsy, and technology's effects on the global marketplace is that our society will continue to utilize social and economic traditions of the past while embracing new technologies and adapting into the future.
Thank you.